So at the end of the day, 90% of those that were surveyed talked about successful AI implementations use more than one data source, right? The ability to kind of cobble and connect these systems together to then give you, so in fact, 93% say successful AI projects actually include more than 3 data sources to then give you that context and visibility as far as where you need to maybe optimize that. So interesting anecdote. So with that, 90% of successful AI needs multiple data sources. Isidro, maybe I'll segue to you. You've often you're brought in to companies where they realize that their data situation is kind of messier than they thought. And you chuckle at this, I know. When a team comes to you saying, we want to deploy AI across the business, what's your process for kind of helping them map out what data they actually need, where it lives, whether their current integration setup is actually set up to handle that? Maybe just kind of walk the team through as far as how they should be thinking about that.
Sure, of course. And I'm gonna throw a fact in here. As you were saying, most companies do not want information only from one source, one data source. I mean, nowadays companies want information from their ERP system, from their MES system, quality systems. So now we get into the realm of having several systems that need to be fitting AI so that we can have a very high level and sometimes even detailed view of all of your operation. So the exercise that I do with other companies is basically we start with the decisions and not specifically the data. As Ronen was saying, if we are going to wait on data, it's going to take us forever. We're never going to implement AI, right? It's never going to be 100% accurate, or it's not going to be 100% clean. But at least when we set the foundation and we try to take the decisions based on what do we want to improve with AI. For example, do we want to do a forecast for cash flow? Then we start working on how does AR, AP, billing schedules look like so that we can actually build that forecast. Also, for example, some other teams, they step out and basically they assume that once you have more data, that is equal to better AI. Not necessarily. If you have a strong foundation, even if you have a few buckets of data on your systems, you're going to be able to pull up some reporting onto that. But we need to know where does the data actually lives, whether if it's the ERP or if it's belonging to a CRM. So we can give the right context to your LLM and therefore give you the right insights on your reporting or even to automate your tasks on the company.
Yeah, no, I think, and Ronen, we see this, right? We see this where companies have multiple data sources, but surprise, they're actually not talking to each other. And what does that look like in practice, to your point around getting AI layered on top of that mess? And what's the actual business impact when these tools can't see beyond their own silos? How do you sort of direct companies to kind of think about that to Isidro's point?
Yeah, and this kind of brings a bigger point here, which has to do with the way the ecosystem is kind of evolving, right? So these days, every SaaS vendor out there is introducing AI capabilities into their product. And you can't blame them. They have to do this, or they can't be left behind. But the result of that is that you have a series of what I call these walled gardens. And you have kind of, an AI tool that lives inside the CRM and another one separately that lives inside the ERP. And if you're asking, for one to perform a task, it will do so, but within its own kind of defined silo. And that obviously is a problem because business operations don't they span across these walled gardens of kind of SaaS vendors created. And that's, of course, an issue. When you talk to customers, and in this area, you find that many of them have literally dozens of different AI tools that are spread out across all these different applications. And that really misses the point of the value of what AI can do for you. Like the only way to really get the value and measure ROI on this is to connect AI across an entire workflow and an entire process. And the core of that is actually kind of connecting all these different silos and different applications. So there's multiple ways you can go about doing that. One way is to try and build kind of direct connections between these applications and integration, if you will. That requires a lot of work and maintenance. It might be a little cheaper these days because you can use AI to do some of that work, but it's still pretty fragile as a strategy and pretty cumbersome. Another that I hear frequently is folks are saying, "Oh, we're just going to move everything into a data warehouse," which is a great idea to the extent that you're able to do that, but it's not always functional. It's not always practical. Many companies have literally hundreds of applications in their software stack, but they're only centralizing data, from 4, 5, 8 of these. And even when they do that, the rate at which they're refreshing the data, might be a few times a day, right? So it's not real-time data, and that obviously creates its own issues. And so what are the other options? Another option is to use an automation platform, an iPaaS, that kind of connects all these different systems and kind of pulls the data together and bridges the silos. And of course, no surprise, we have an opinion about that, but we think it's kind of the way to go, and it's been proven very effective in a lot of these settings.